the
I know.
mobile and the.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Those of you that are able to join us live, welcome. Those of you that are also joining us by watching this in a replay, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of your time to chat about cards and issuing cards. And I'll tell you what, I have a person here that I have grown to know over the past year or so. Jeff Schultz and I have had many conversations, both in and around the embedded banking space, but also the fintech space as a whole, working with fintech founders and speaking to them about how they might go about issuing a card. So we're going to get into a lot of things out here today, but I'll just start by saying, Jeff, I often engage with fintech founders when they have a product, they're taking it to market, they've seen traction, and they start thinking in terms of the next step. And that next step for many of these fintech founders is, I'd like to go about issuing a card. So I want to get into this conversation about, should every fintech issue a card, why we might go through this process, and a whole host of other questions. But before we dig into that, Jeff, why don't we go ahead and take just a moment to introduce ourselves? And I'll ask you to begin that process. Mr. Schultz, go ahead.
Well, kindly thank you, Stacy. It's a treat being here with you, and I mean, just enjoying our relationship within the whole fintech sphere, and your knowledge is incredible to understanding this space, and it's just great to give a different perspective that we've shared different perspectives. And so who am I? So I'm a guy who's, as my younger son told me last night, make sure you say this. I've been selling longer than I've been married, and I've been married over 37 years. So and I've been in this space itself, in the banking space, in the card space, for 30 years. So I sometimes feel like I'm here since plastic was invented, but it's been a joy. I mean, because nothing has happened in 30 years in banking, right? So the experience I've gotten, nothing. Pretty boring. Yeah, nothing going on. So the experience that I have, really from a card perspective, has been monumental. It's been everything from, don't you still carry a magstripe ATM card in your wallet, right? So that you get a pin mailed to you, 3 days later. I've seen it from
Absolutely.
I've seen it, migrate up to, affinity cards. You see if you recall, the MBNAs of the world, who had 5,000 plus portfolios, affinity co-brand portfolios. I've seen the move to EMV. I was involved with one of the first chip cards that was actually issued by a bank in the U.S. back in the early 2000s, and it's just been an experience like no tomorrow. Been involved with biometrics, with lighted up cards, with different substrates, EMV, of course, contactless, and it's all gone up, even moved up now to digital.
That's right.
So it's astonishing.
Tap to pay is something that I couldn't live without these days. And we have seen this migration also to virtual cards, but never solely virtual cards, Jeff. And that's why I think this conversation is so important, at least with the individuals I speak with, and I'll be interested to chat with you further about this as well. There is still this desire to issue plastic. And you mentioned affinity, and I'm going to say affinity in relation to even customer segments. I'm seeing quite a few digital brands rolling up, bank brands rolling up a digital offering with an affinity card, meaning a group or segment of customers that get this card. We're big Chiefs fans in our household as well. So my husband has a personalized Chief card.
I'm sorry about that.
It's a tough year. I got to tell you, it's not a great time to be a Chiefs fan. Last year and the year before, it was way more fun. But before I go any further in this conversation, a little bit about me, Stacy Bishop. It's a pleasure to be here alongside this gentleman, Jeff Schultz. And I grew up inside the core banking space. So speaking to core banks about all of their offerings, of which cards was part of that. Since exiting into the fintech realm, I often encounter this interest, or at least this question or curiosity, Jeff, about, I don't know, should I issue a card? Should I not? What does that even mean and what does it entail? Where do I go? And whenever those questions are posed to me, I am not the person to assist with how that goes about. And that's when I reach out to my good friend Jeff here on the call. Because Jeff, you are the go-to guy for me anytime I have something related to cards and all of the aspects related to cards. So, kind sir, we're just going to jump into it if you are ready. I've prepared some questions I think could be interesting for anyone that's out there listening, regardless of where you are on your journey. So, why don't we go ahead and get started with this particular question, Jeff? Why launch a card program? Why would a fintech even have that desire?
So there's multiple reasons, So first of all, one of the easiest ways to answer this question is you want to get transaction fees, right? So that's one tiny little thing. It might not even be tiny, but the more cards you have out there, the more times you get a transaction
Sure.
fee, right? And that adds up. I mean, when fintech first started up, which prepaid pre-existed before fintech, but then it got sexy and it got called fintech, right? I'm massaging this a little bit. So what happened was in the wild 2010s into 2020s into 2020, the wild west, it was like everybody wanted to issue a debit card, specifically because they were able to get transaction fees. Like the more cards you had in market, the higher the level of purchase, the more fees you were going to receive, right? So
Makes sense.
and this is how programs like Chime grew, right? Chime is an incredible company that they figured out the secret sauce early, and they've pivoted, they've done some stuff because there's some issues, but over time the card market has changed in the fintech world due to compliance, due to risk issues, right? When I say the Wild West, there's a reason for that, right? So, a lot of reasons at this juncture is there's when you want to launch a card program, that makes you far more sticky than just doing a loan or just doing something to that would just be one dimensional. Being able to use a card is going to be able to open up many more doors. Listen, a physical card is a banner, it's a billboard of your company, right? And it's in theory it's cheap to be able to take out that card, even if it's on your phone, but it's still in theory. This is not the most expensive thing in the world to for a program to use. So launching a card program will provide far more reach than just having an online presence of doing something. And if you're doing something like with embedded finance, right, for companies who don't have a program, this is just another means of having them use your vehicle to spend money, to do what they need to do. So it's not everybody should do that, right? But there's certainly reasons to do that.
Yeah, and I want to get into a little bit later on some of the reasons perhaps why or how you might qualify yourself in or out. But the reasons behind having that almost a billboard, a plastic billboard in your customer's wallet is
Or metal.
Yeah, it's attractive. And I like that kind of a model and that approach. And of course, we see that with embedded. That is one of the easiest areas to begin an embedded journey. If you look around at the various cards in your wallet from the retailers, I know we talk all, as an industry about Starbucks quite a bit, or Target, or fill in the blank retailer that is not a bank that has a card with their logo on it, they are, of course, using embedded. I like to play around with different types of FI relationships. I mean, we're in this space. Why not? I like to see what's out there. So I do also have a relationship with a fintech bank that issues a card through a sponsor bank. And I have the option of both the physical card and the digital card. Guess what? Of course, I have both. Why not? But it is that nice billboard. I do also think and completely agree with you, it's not a billboard needed for everyone. And I want to move actually into kind of some of the next question here. When you are that fintech, Jeff, that's considering launching a card program, do you have a suggestion about like what you need to know about launching the card program? And keep in mind, we'll get into a little bit more of specifics and dollar amounts later, but anything that you might suggest here?
It depends upon where they are in the journey, right? Are they
Okay.
just somebody who's right out of the gate going, I think I can do the next best thing, or is it somebody, a founder, a fintech founder, who's already, gone beaten to hell
Yeah.
through all sorts of measures to get to the point where they are, where now they're saying, all right, I think we can do a card. So it depends upon, again, card is about convenience, right? So it depends upon where they are in their journey. So,
Okay.
what typically, not even typically, what a founder really needs to determine is, they need to understand there are 5 elements that they
Yeah.
need to go through to launch a card program. There you
Which
go.
you call the 5 card components. You want to get into those right quick?
Yeah,
Let's
that's
go
perfect.
through. Yeah.
So the very first thing a founder needs, a fintech needs, is what's called a BIN sponsor. BIN, B-I-N, as we all know, bank identification number. What a lame acronym. But that's the very first thing that a fintech needs, because they need to have the financial backing and the FDIC controls and
Right.
insurance for a program. They're going to do so much of the heavy lifting to determine whether you're passing all AML and KYC type of requirements. They're going to do a very large part of the compliance involved. Now, it's not everything, but from a banking perspective, they're going to look at it and go, is this a kosher program, or is it not something that we should deal with?
Yeah.
And once you've gotten to that point, once a fintech has gotten into that BIN sponsor, and we're talking banks like, I know you mentioned one you're working with, but if you're working with like Cross River or Finwise or Sunrise or whoever it might be, there are multiple BIN sponsors out there who will back your program, assuming it fits and it gets all the check boxes.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a good point. You don't just get a card because you want a card. There are challenges.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of checks and balances.
Which is why you exist, to help with those check boxes. What would you say the second one is?
So the second one is absolutely, you want to look into an issuing processor, not a merchant processor, but an issuing processor.
Got it.
Right, an issuing processor is going to be like a Fiserv or a FIS, or in the fintech world, you're talking about the Galileos or the Lithics or Marquettas, folks like that. These are issuing banks. Issuing processors who understand the business, understand how to get a card to market, and when I say to market, is they're doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes to do all the all the things that have to get merchants to accept cards. Of course, it's even though it's on the issuing side, they're doing all the heavy lifting for the fintech on the processing side, making sure payments are going through, making sure there's settlement at the end of the day when you have a credit card. Credit card is also an entirely different processor,
Yeah,
right?
An animal.
Versus versus debit. So you need to make sure that you have an extremely viable processor, and they also are going to vet you, you know, before, almost more than, or maybe as much as, the bin sponsor. So you have to be sure your balance sheets are clean and, understandable.
Of course. And it's understandable why. There's a great deal of lift involved. There's a great deal of outlay involved as well. So it's understandable. And I think we in the banking world sometimes take that for granted. It's just good to know these checks are in place if you're a fintech founder and you think this is just an easy thing to accomplish. We'll get into a little bit more of the timing, but I think the third thing that I've heard you mention is it this one?
Yep.
Card network?
Yep.
You're
So
making decisions. You've got the BIN, you've got the issuing card processor, and boom, now we're here at the card network. Tell us a little bit about this one, Jeff.
So a lot of that has to do with your processor, right? And you need to understand when you look at a card network, you're talking about Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, right? The big four. And although a bank and although a processor may have relationships with them, you need to also gain your own relationship. Now, the people who are going to drive that relationship for your program is going to be the processor for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
Right? The bank has their own, the bank has their own relationship with Visa and MasterCard, right? Right. And they work in their own lanes, right? When it comes to a new client, a fintech, something to that extent, these companies, like the processors, have to understand. We'll recommend you to talk to, and here's people to talk to at Visa or MasterCard, Discover, American Express. So these are people who you can have a conversation with, and then they have a discussion with them and determine. Once everything works out, then they say, honestly, it comes down to economics so many times. Like, what could which network can give me the best, the best for me. So.
That's important. And then I think we start. So I think what I've heard you say thus far, if I can encapsulate it, you're making these decisions. And sometimes these decisions help filter you down into a course of action. So for example, if you're working with a bank for a BIN sponsor and they have a particular processor that is MasterCard in nature, it may be a bit more difficult to use that particular bank BIN sponsor to go Discover route if you have your heart set on them. So depending upon some of these choices you make, you could be opening yourself up or limiting yourself. And then it becomes somewhat of an economic type of discussion based upon the options you have then at your disposal. Did I get that right, Jeff?
Yeah, you did that great.
Okay. Well, then we start to get into some of the fun stuff. At least I think it's fun. And I would think that this is where any sort of fintech founder that's out there thinking about using a debit and or a credit card as brand recognition, as somewhat of a plastic billboard for themselves, would be thinking in terms of, now let's talk about how we get the card. How is that card manufactured? And then the final step, how we really make it on brand for us. So I think that next step, the fourth one is it this one here, the card manufacturer?
Yep. So, and I'm going to blend that one and the next one, which is also the card personalization facility. So two things. So yes, this is the exciting part, right? Now, mind you, when fintech founders want to launch a program, they know numbers. Boy, do they know numbers. Or they have MBAs in marketing and experience beyond belief that this is, let's be honest, marketing is the vehicle that really gets people to notice things. But why would these founders know anything about card manufacturing? Why would anybody but people like me know about card manufacturing?
They don't need to, because there's people like you. Yeah.
Right. Yes, you're right. They don't need to, but there's an issue there because they have preconceived notions. I've worked with
Okay.
I've
Think
worked
through
with
that.
thousands of fintechs, and there's so many founders who have preconceived notions that says, oh, let's just issue a card. You can do this in like 30 days, right? And I'm like, hold on, and it comes back to the first questions of, um, you know, have you gotten a bin sponsor? Do you have a processor? Do you know what
Yeah.
brand you're talking about? And if they say they're working on that, that's great because at least they're thinking that, okay, now I need to get a physical piece of payment, but what do
Yeah.
I do next? So what do we do next? So what's interesting about this is there are so many variables. I will say this. Production, literal manufacturing of a card, whether it's a plastic PVC card, whether it's a heavier weight metal card, right? Um, there are production lead times. They have to go into the queue, right?
Sure.
And those lead times can reach from 4 weeks to 12 weeks, depending upon material availability, depending upon the time of year, meaning the end of the year, manufacturing facilities get really busy because gift cards are really, hitting the market for the end of the year sales, right? And that all starts in July. All those orders start ordering, coming in. So when I say the lead time start there, that doesn't mean, oh, okay, it'll take, Jeff just said 4 weeks. Hold on. Hold on, Skippy. It doesn't take just 4 weeks. What you have to figure out here is, let's talk about your design. Does it fall, first of all, do you have a design in mind? Do you have a
Yeah.
designer? Do you have somebody who's familiar with the card market, with regulations for PCI compliance, right? For design and Visa and MasterCard regulations, right? So you have to, have them understand that. You have to also, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's not just your marketing department slapping a logo out there. There's a bit more. Man, I would have gone to Canva. See, this is why I need you in my life, Jeff, because I would have thought that was an easier process, and that's
Right.
from someone that has been in this space my entire life and entire career.
Right.
Okay,
So
so
you've been on the numbers side.
so much. Yep.
This is creative side, right? So once you kind of figure out what kind of design you want, what substrate you want, right? Do you want it on a PVC? Do you want it, do you want it on a 17-gram metal card?
Oh yeah, I do.
What what is it? Well,
There's some there.
we can talk about that. So
Okay.
there you have to come to the conclusion what you want from your design. And once you figure that out, then the artwork has to be provided to the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer has to provide PDF proofs, and it goes back and forth. Oh, I don't like this color, is I've seen some founders go, yeah, it's fine. Let's this is cool. I like it. I've seen other founders just get so deep in the weeds that they come to a plant and they piss off everybody in the facility because they think they know best, which is fine, which is fine. But what happens is, remember when I came back and said, it could be 4 to 12 weeks or something to that extent. Well, that timeline doesn't start until Visa or MasterCard or American Express or Discover, the network, gives approval of the design. So really, if you want to launch something in May, right? If you think you want to launch a card in May, you've got your bin sponsor, you've got the network, you've got the processor. You want to launch something in May. Well, you can't start thinking about a card in March, right? So there are so many steps that have to come up prior to actual approval, final proof approval by the network. Once that comes out, so literally the clock does not start ticking until that time, until there's proof approval.
So we're talking about the clock here, and I know there's no hard and fast rule. You've given us this wonderful understanding that there's a lot of variables that go into card production. Well, let's say somebody did want to launch a card program. You said May. Let's make it a little later. Let's say they wanted to launch a card program in November of 2026. When should they begin to engage someone like you or begin doing this exploration? Is it now? Is it a few
Yeah,
months from now?
it's 10 a.m. Eastern today is when they
So,
should.
okay, so you got 20 minutes. You got
Yeah.
20 minutes, everyone. Well, and that, assuming they have all of their financials, all of their details needed in order to be properly vetted, it's still a significant process, is what I'm hearing, before
So
that first article goes out with their logo.
yes. So and I'm also going to take another step.
Sure.
In parallel, while you're getting cards produced, while you're figuring out designs, you're going back and forth with you're going back and forth with approvals, proof approvals, or not, or you're doing press checks. They come to the plant, they see the cards running on press. Is this what you want? While this is all happening, and until you get like approval from the founder, from the client, and then next step, of course, getting network approval, you have to do the card personalization point, which means when a card is issued, for example, Stacy Bank wants to issue a card, right? So Stacy Bank needs to get cards personalized. And what that means is any number, any Visa number, any MasterCard number, whatever that is, has to be issued by the network to the card personalization facility, right? So it's unbelievably secure. So it goes through the processor and it comes also to the card personalization facility. So once the card personalization facility, the fulfillment, daily fulfillment, gets that information, then what they do is, let's say Stacy Bank has 1,000 people wanting card this particular day. Well, we get a file, a card personalization facility will get a file at 4 a.m, and then it will be parsed into what, let's say you have 3 different designs, right? So you get, 250 of one, you get 800 of another, you get 100, you get 175 of another design of yours. Well, then they have to go, the people in the personalization facility have to go and pick those materials out of the vault, including the card, including the carrier, including including the envelopes. All those things have to be set up in a Kanban system type of thing, and then put in line to get done, so it's issued within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, so let me zoom out for a minute then, based on what I've heard you say. We now know why a fintech founder might pursue a card program. We know that there are 5 elements that come into play, and each of these elements, we know there are decisions that need to be made. And when we get to the fun part, where we're working with the card manufacturer and personalizing the card, while it may take a period of time for the necessary approvals, seems like there are some things that can be done at the same time in parallel paths. So it keeps the process moving forward, so that once all of the approvals are there and set, the card personalization itself, is that where it can take place ongoing and mailing within 24 to 48 hours? Perfect. So the work being spent planning, making the decisions up front, getting the card program and the personalization done, obviously it makes perfect sense. You put the time and the effort in there so that things run smoothly down the path. Let me ask you this, Jeff. Is there a reason why a fintech founder can't just go to a bank where they have their corporate accounts and say, I want to issue a card? How do I do that?
So a bank will be able to give suggestions. They won't be able to say, okay, we can do this, unless you are, and unless you're a banking as a service provider, like a Lithic or a Galileo or somebody to that extent, or Pfizer, whomever it might be. They're the one but they're not banks, right? So they're basically the processing. Right. The bank really wants to be, for all intents and purposes, the bank will help to a certain extent if they're equipped Otherwise, they want to be hands off and stay in their lanes.
And that makes sense. We each have our specialty, our core competency. We know in the banking space, banks are pretty set on what their core competencies are and advising on when something might fall outside of their purview. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I understand then that completely, which is why you've worked with the thousands of fintechs that you have over your career versus somebody just going and doing it all through a bank. It makes sense. I guess I'm curious. There are some requirements in order to get a card program off the ground. So, what kind of capital does a fintech founder need? Is this something that a startup can do? Somebody that doesn't yet have any customers, or I guess it depends on their capital structure. So, what does that bank account need to look like, Jeff?
If you're just starting out and you need to get the bin sponsor, you need to get the processor, you need to get the cards manufactured and the daily fulfillment.
Yeah, all of it.
Out of the gate, you need at least $1 million, just just to start, because
I would guess that.
all that programming at the processor, all the testing, all the things that go on cost a lot of money. The processor will also provide all different types of support, whether it's going to be customer service, or are you going to run your own customer service? Do you have your own compliance? You have, are you going to do FICO checks? Are you going to do things like that? So there are multiple things that add up that are necessary to reduce risk and to do all that. So, and then there's the cost of the materials for cards, and which is almost insignificant compared to what it costs to start with a processor, for example. So, but you definitely need to start with $1 million in your pocket, and then you're going to need to have more. And the other thing is regarding like timelines. If you think, and I've seen this, and I know you've seen this ad nauseum, if you think something's going to happen in 6 months, add at least 3 months more, at least 3 months more. And the biggest thing that we all need to understand is transparency. There's one thing, I've never done, and I know you haven't either. I don't make promises. I say I'm going to do my very best to do what I can, because transparency of when you can deliver, when things have to happen, just don't depend upon you or me.
Right.
There's a myriad of things that have to go on, so.
Goodness. With all the players you've mentioned, even thus far, that orchestrate a card being issued, absolutely. I can see there's a number of risk points that have nothing to do with a fintech founder, which may be executing just at the highest levels, or yourself, or even the bin sponsor. There's so many different players that come into play that can honestly throw a caution flag into the mix and cause that process to be extended.
Yes.
I wouldn't have guessed $1 million. That seems, wow. It seems like a higher number than I thought. But I also can appreciate again, everything that goes into the testing, everything that goes into the production. Just a good figure to know, I suppose.
So I will have a caveat on that.
Yeah, please.
If you go with somebody, like I keep bringing them up, Lithic or Next, or somebody like that.
Great companies.
Right, great companies. They will have program management, or Galileo. They'll have program management, basically card in a box, that can reduce the time to market. It can perhaps reduce the costs, but they're in a box. It's not necessarily always going to be what you want as a founder, but there are ways to get to market quicker, and perhaps less expensively. But if you want to do it, organically, you need to be prepared for all sorts of starts and stumbles and a lot of money in your pocket.
Okay, that's good to know. And I'm assuming that you have the ability then to help position people towards appropriate avenues depending upon what their needs are, the expectations about their I say expectations, what they share their needs are, if they have particular timelines they're trying to hit. you might recommend a series of paths and potentially say, well, these paths exist over here. They're not going to help you meet your timeline, but they are here. They are existing. I guess what I'm asking you, Jeff, is would as someone with your expertise and your services, I know you're never going to suggest one route or another, but you can help them position with the caveats they give you?
Absolutely. So my specialty is in the card manufacturing and daily fulfillment side.
Yeah.
I can make suggestions based upon relationships regarding BIN sponsors, regarding banks, regarding processors. I can certainly make suggestions. I don't manage that part of the process, but I can make suggestions. I can, connect people with other people, right?
People.
Right. I know people. Yeah. But
I know
when it comes to the actual card manufacturing, I have relationships with most every single card manufacturer in the industry. I've worked with so many of them. I've worked for them in the 30 years that I've been in this industry. I really know card production, and this is something that people just don't understand yet. And again, I say this: they shouldn't know this, and they should need somebody. They should have somebody who can guide them.
It's like, I don't need to know how my car's transmission works, rather, but I need to know people that do know how that works. Whenever I have questions or challenges, or should I need a new one, here's to hoping that's not the case. But and I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you one final question, kind sir, as we wrap up. Because with all of this experience you have, I'm sure you know a great deal of what good looks like. And I'm sure you've seen certain pitfalls, areas where founders probably just need to know this is something to watch. There's caution tape around this piece. Do you have any areas that you might share with anyone that's going to be watching this that says, hey, watch out for these caution areas?
It's expectations. It's their specific expectations based upon what they've heard or what they think they know. Always, I say this, and I really mean this: if you think something is going to take 6 months, add 3 months, add 6 more months, because and be flexible. That's all I can say. So just your expectations are wonderful, but there's so many variables, so many tangents that can go wrong, that we need to be really careful about that.
And let's not to put too fine a point on this, but I'm going to. We are speaking about something that is highly regulated, highly secured. It's not that, at least I'm gathering from your comments, the expectations or scope creep or missed timelines are not because these players, those spot players, don't want to make it happen. But there's such security, there's such steps involved that need to be done in a very compliant fashion, in a very step A, step B, step C type of fashion. Is that what I'm hearing from you? It's not that the card personalization folks don't want you to get your perfect card. It's more so these other elements, or am I misreading that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is, like I said, there's so many. I was just chuckling because I was looking at the comments, because folks in the market, in the industry, who I know is just wonderful people. But it's yes, you just have to be. You just have to know that there are going to be landmines everywhere, and you got to be very nimble, and you need to be able to pivot as much as you possibly. Any founder of any company, Cole, and any thank you, Cole. Any founder in any business has to be very careful.
Absolutely. I'm going to show these comments for anyone out there in the fintech space that is kicking around the idea of issuing a card. I just want to share with you some of these elements being nicely placed out here for Mr. Jeff Schultz, my guest today, my partner in crime, that is sharing all he knows very graciously about what a good card program looks like. what perhaps not so good can look like, and just bringing your expertise to bear on this discussion, Jeff. I have greatly appreciated the time, and I hope it's the first of others that we are going to do together, because this type of discussion is only becoming more and more common, more and more interesting as well. At least in the BaaS space, something I'm paying quite a bit of attention to: creators getting into embedded banking, creators like Mr. Beast wanting to have his own FI, or exploring charters, exploring services, exploring perhaps in the future a Mr. Beast card. These are the things we're going to start seeing more and more card issuance, I predict, more and more card personalization out there for these individuals that have so much of our eyeball attention right now that they're likely going to get some of our wallet attention. So Jeff, I predict you and your colleagues are going to be very busy in the future.
That's very kind.
And with that, no, thank you for joining. Jeff, any parting words before we let everyone get back to their day? You got a guy, I know that.
Yeah,
Start now. You got 4
minutes.
Reach out to Jeff. I guess, Jeff, where can people find you? Is LinkedIn the best route?
So LinkedIn is great. My own consulting company is fintechcard.biz. And what I will do, I will help guide the card process, the card production process, and work with everybody. I don't just go to one supplier, whatever. I will go to multiple and give the client the option, and I will handhold more than they will ever know how to get through the whole process and do it as safely and as unburdened as possible, shall we say. So I'll be able to help those folks who can do that. Again, it's fintechcard.biz, and I'm at jeff.schultz@fintechcard.biz, and my contact information is on LinkedIn as well. So I'm just thrilled to see how I can help folks up. I've been doing this a long time. A long time, and it's something that I'm very comfortable helping folks out, and not even from a card perspective, from a sales management perspective. I can offer any advice and provide that. So.
I can attest to that. Jeff has been a great just sounding board for me, working with founders that have questions or concerns, and just a wonderful conduit of information, just a good person in the space. So for that, kind sir, I thank you. Thanks to everyone that joined us live. And for those of you that are going to be watching this replay, please, please, please follow up and connect with Mr. Jeff Schultz out there. The fintechcard.biz gentleman you need to know. With that, Jeff, I wish you a wonderful day, and a wonderful day to everyone else out there.
Thank you, Stacey, and thank you to everybody.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.